speaker and rising authority in millennial women's empowerment. Through her training and development company, Courtney provides online and in-person education, mentorship, and community for millennial women. Reaching hundreds of thousands of followers through her social platforms and email newsletter, Courtney has transformed the strategy reputation of personal and professional development into a social experience by making it fresh, relatable, and easy to understand. Courtney has had the opportunity to speak to and be featured by a number of organizations, including the White House, Forbes, and the Levo League, among others. So without further ado, ladies, let's welcome Miss Courtney.
Thank you. It's always so weird having your bio read.
Yeah.
That's not me. No. So I'm super geeked that Tony even invited me to do this because in my branding, I talk a lot about entrepreneurship, but I think sometimes people get it a little twisted and they're like, oh, she just wants everybody to quit their job, because that was a part of my story. And while that was definitely a path that I wanted to take, I'm actually really passionate about helping women create entrepreneurship, whether you want to quit your job or not. So this is definitely not going to be like, go out and quit your job, you know. I mean, if you're inspired to, more power to you, but I really love this idea of building something on the side that can replace your income if necessary. So, without further ado, just curious, how many of you, well, I think everybody, but maybe not, how many of you work in a corporate setting? Okay, everybody. A corporate 9 to 5. Some shaking your head, no. Okay. How many want to climb the corporate ladder? Okay. And how many want to jump off the corporate ladder and build their own ladder? Okay. So the room is split. The room is split about half and half, and I think women on both tracks are actually really important. There's a lot of talk about entrepreneurship, and everybody knows how powerful it can be to do that if you do it full time. But then I look at people like Boz from Uber, I'm like obsessed with her. I'm always on her Instagram, like, oh my goodness, she's in Ghana and Switzerland and all these cool things. But I think having this type of representation in corporate America is really important, not just because of what our contributions can do for the companies and the products that we're creating. So, we use Uber every day. It's really nice to have somebody who has that a different viewpoint than the traditional white males that we see in that environment, but at the same time, it's good to bring other people along with you. So just as Tony was talking earlier about, Harriet Tubman, many of us can be our own Harriet Tubmans in our corporate positions, regardless of what we want to do. So I'm not anti 9 to 5. I am just anti your 9 to 5 being your only source of income. I'm really big on getting you out of that mindset, and we'll talk about that a little later, but I'm a big believer that your ability to create income outside of your job actually is not optional, but your financial destiny really depends on it. So we'll see if you agree with me at the end of this. Another thing is female entrepreneurship, millennial entrepreneurship is super hot right now. You see all the headlines. All these millennial entrepreneurs are doing this. Women are starting businesses at X amount of rate. Women of color are doing these crazy things in the business world. But I find that a lot of women talk about entrepreneurship. They say, 2018 is going to be my year. I'm going to do it. They get really excited about it. But I follow up with women year after year, and it's like, I'm still getting my business cards printed, or I'm still working on my website. So just curious, how many of you have talked about or, threatened basically to start a business sometime soon? Okay. So my goal is to move you out of talking and threatening to do so, to actually doing so. And I'm really passionate about this, and you'll be surprised how I even got on the subject, but it all started with house parties. So maybe I'm dating myself slightly, but who even knows who this is, right? Kid play, okay. House party, right? All right, so it wasn't actually kid and play house parties, but so I'm from Detroit. I don't know if I have any Midwesterners here, but my parents were live. They were not your normal soccer mom parent. They were always throwing house parties for their 40-something friends. And so growing up when I was a teenager, most teenagers, they want to be around their parents. They want to go hang out with their own friends. I was like, oh my goodness, my parents were throwing these crazy parties downstairs, and they'd say, oh, you guys go up to the media room and watch TV. Don't be in grown folks' business. And so I'm like, what? I'm like, 14, 15, always trying to get around, and they're like sending me back upstairs. So they used to do these parties pretty frequently. And my parents had a lot of, well-to-do, successful friends. So my mom was climbing the corporate ladder. My stepdad was a small business owner and did entrepreneurship, and he had a lot of vendors and contractors and things. And it was really cool growing up to see all these professional black men and women who would pull up to our house in Mercedes, and they'd jump out in the winter with their fur coats, and they always had big wedding rings, and I was like, I'm gonna grow up and be them, super fly. I want to live, in a big house in the suburbs and be one of those black people that drive an E-Class. But I'll never forget, as I got a little older, I started kind of noticing the ebbs and flows of these parties, and so usually around 11 o'clock, after the wine had been flowing and things were kind of winding down and people were just kicking it in the living room, I noticed that they would get on serious subjects, and because they were a little looser, they were just kind of talking about the real, and they weren't noticing me. So I just kind of mosey on into the kitchen. I'm just getting a glass of water, but I'd kind of lean on the island to listen to what they had to say, hoping that I wouldn't get noticed and get told to go back upstairs. And I was really amazed, but also kind of crestfallen to hear a lot of them in their own ways talking about the frustrations that they were dealing with in corporate America and how it wasn't as glamorous as they thought it was. And so I'm like, what? Y'all have this huge house. You drove up in a Mercedes, but then I'm hearing such and such's father talking about how his job is relocating him to North Dakota, and he's going to have to, get an apartment out there and try to figure out how to commute back and forth to Michigan when he's got teenagers growing up, or how such and such's mother was, really dealing with discrimination at work, or people cutting down her abilities and not being able to make the money that she really wanted to make, and that they had all these bills and they had to pay for that E-Class. That car note was really expensive. The house note was expensive. Such and such wanted to go to college. And I was like, oh, wait, this is not as glamorous as it looks. And financially, this is a problem. So that was the first seed for me to really think having a fabulous job with a fabulous salary isn't necessarily the answer. So that really set me on a journey to figure out, how can I make sure that this is not my reality? So just curious, how many of you have ever heard this saying from Maya Angelou? Yes. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Well, I'm the kind of person who believes when someone shows you what they're struggling with, believe them the first time. I am not someone who thinks that I can never get to somebody else's situation or what they're dealing with. I don't ever think that won't happen to me. I'm better than that. I think a lot of times people kind of drop hints, even if they don't tell you because they don't want to put all your business, you can kind of see it. And we just think, that's just not going to be my situation. So whether it was with school, whether it was with jobs and career, whether it was with women telling me how challenging it was to have kids and raise kids in corporate America, when people tell me what they're struggling with, I believe them. And so right at that moment, 16, 17, that really set me off on a journey to figure out, how can I prepare for my success? Because success doesn't come by happenstance, it comes by intention. And so I got really intentional about learning more about money, learning about how business, how careers, how all these things work, so that when I grew up and I was in my late 40s, early 50s, I wasn't sitting in my friend's house with wine talking about how I was dealing with a lot of these same struggles. So early on, I didn't know any better, so I read books, and I still recommend that everybody read books. To this day, these are still some of my favorites. First book I ever read on money management is The Motley Fool Investment Guide for Teens. I tell adults all the time, get this book. Even though it says it's for teens, the way it breaks things down, it's super simple. That really opened my eyes to this idea that money could be made without you necessarily needing to work for it. That was the first time I was really exposed to this concept. And they show the tables, you've probably seen them. If you invest $1,000 in 30 years, you're going to be a millionaire. And so I was like, oh, really? I thought you had to work to accumulate $1 million. I didn't know that investments work that way. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was another big one that I read in college that taught me the difference truly between assets and liabilities. And The Richest Man in Babylon is an excellent book written at the turn of the century, right around the Great Depression, that it's like a story or a narrative, but it talks about the best ways to manage your money. And so that really got me on the right track in terms of understanding how money works and how to be financially free. But I truly didn't learn how money really worked until I graduated from college. So I'm not someone who's standing up here who's never worked a corporate job, like many of you. I graduated from school. I got a good job after college. I got a good government job, in fact, after college with a 10% 401k match. Like, yeah, when I left, people were like, "Oh, you stupid! Like, we get 10% 401k match here." But I worked for the federal government in finance and banking, and it was really interesting and really eye-opening because I got to see monetary policy and how money actually works, how it's created, banking, all of that. And I realized all of my thoughts about money up until this point was completely wrong. So have you ever experienced where you had like a favorite song growing up and you've been singing it one way and then one day you look up the lyrics when you're an adult and you're like, the lyrics are totally wrong. Like, what in the world was I singing? That's how I felt when I got into this job because I got to see how money works up close and how like the government did money. And I was like, oh man, I was singing the wrong money song, like for real. My lyrics were all jacked up, particularly when it came to how do you get money. So a lot of times we think like, I don't know, there's some entity, the treasury, something, I don't know. They're printing a bunch of dollar bills somewhere and you know, you get a good job and maybe you can get some of those dollar bills. Like that was my chase and that's how I got on the rat race. But not to get too technical with the economics of it, but what I learned, particularly with banks, is that how money actually comes into our system is, you deposit $1 at the bank will turn around and loan $10, even though they don't have $10. Like they literally loan what they don't have, and so when that person that they loaned the $10 to pays them back, they essentially created $9 out of thin air. And so that's how our monetary policy works in a really simple way. But what this taught me was that there's a distinct difference between making money and earning money. So to make, the definition, means to form something by putting parts together, combining substances, constructing, creating something. So we see these synonyms: to fabricate, to put together, to construct, et cetera, et cetera. But I looked up the definition of earn, and that is to obtain money in return for your labor or your services. So there's a really distinct difference because before you can earn money, someone has to make it. And I realized at my corporate job, if this is my only source of income, not only was I at the mercy of what they were willing to pay me, but in a way I was getting less of what was made. They were making the money and I was begging them for a portion of that, and I was earning it through my own labor and my own time, and I'm just one person, so that by definition limits me. So I thought back to my crossroads, and most of us have this crossroads where you go to a good school. Your parents tell you to go to a good school. I went to Howard University, and they're like, you need to do this so that you can get a good job. So me growing up, I have always been a foodie. I know a lot of teenagers, they will go and work at their favorite shoe store or something to get clothes for cheap. Me, I was like so greedy. I was always working at my favorite restaurants, like TGI Fridays and Panera Bread, because I wanted the stuff for free. So I thought it was fabulous. But my parents and my mom and everybody, they're like, girl, if you don't stop working at these little restaurant jobs, you want to be a waitress for the rest of your life, you want to be a hostess for the rest of your life, you need to go to school so that you can get a good job and support yourself, which is exactly what I did and what exactly most of us do. So what happens? We go get that good corporate job. Hopefully we get a good salary. We buy a cute car. Shout out to those of you who have a Camry. I bought my Honda Accord. I was like, yes, join it, 2-seater. We get a really cute apartment and all is well. But then life happens, and maybe on top of that we meet a really cute boy, I don't know. Get married, make a really cute baby, listen to the choir, and our life circumstances change. So now the wedding costs, this kid costs, our lifestyle has elevated, so what do? We know we need to go get a better job, right? So we go get a better job, and now we've got a better car, we've got a better house, but these are expensive too. And so it keeps us on the cycle of getting a better job. And a lot of times, once we have ascended beyond a certain level, we're finding that we have to go back to school, right, to get a better job, take out on more debt. Most of us will take out loans that are a multiple of the income that we expect to get. So if we're like, I'm trying to get over $100,000 job, a lot of us have no problem taking out a $50,000 loan. And so you see how it keeps us on the cycle because we always have to work more and to get more in order to do that. So the issue with this is that your expanding lifestyle is constantly funded by your wages earned. And remember, there's a difference. So when you focus strictly on earning money, you are then responsible for all of this. So you think, if I could just accumulate a mass of money, if I could just accumulate enough in the bank, and you should definitely save, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, but you would have to accumulate a lot of money to be able to comfortably fund a lot of the different things that we want in our lifestyle. And this seems totally normal, but I didn't recognize this until I got my job in banking and I saw how bankers did it, I saw how investment people did it, other entrepreneurs, big time people who had money. This was not their focus. They were not so focused on how much can they work to earn enough money to then be able to cover all the things that they wanted in life. What they were focused on was making money, because money has to be made before it can be earned. So, just curious, if you had to think about your budget or your expenses, on average, how many expenses or different bills, different ways you have outflow in your finances would you say you have in your life right now? 15? All right, so we got our rent or mortgage, car note, cable bill, student loans, cell phone, energy bill, utilities, Netflix, kids.
Okay, those are like my 10.
Right, yeah, you're like, oh, 10, and then you start counting, and you're like, well, but then there's the extras, right? So the manicure, brunch, shopping, girls trip, like, you know, maybe we need both hands and both feet to count how many expenses. All right, how many sources of income do we have for all those expenses? One. You see how imbalanced that is? You have one source of income that is responsible for all 20 of your expenses. Would a business do that? A business would be out of business, but you are your own business. So I'm encouraging you to think of You Inc. If You Inc. wants to remain solvent for the duration of her life, You Inc. is going to need some additional streams of income. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about. Feel free to make this interactive. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, but how do you make money? Well, to get it started, I'll tell you how I made money. So I was in college. I was starting to get hit to this game a little bit, but my eyes weren't totally open. But through a series of really fortunate circumstances, I started blogging about personal development, money mindset, and entrepreneurship, and I started to attract a following. And I didn't know that I could monetize this following or that people would pay me for any of this, but I just started sharing my expertise on the internet. And a conference that I had attended previously, they saw what I was doing, and they were like, oh, we would like you to design the curriculum for the new crop of students that are going to be coming to this conference because you're building this following and they really like your information online. And so I was like, oh, really? Like, you know, I thought they wanted me to do this for free. And they're like, no, submit an RFP. And so I had to, like, Google what an RFP was. I had no idea. And they gave me all the information. And it ended up being, it was going to be a $70,000 contract. And I was, like, maybe 21. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, are you guys kidding me? Like, can I really do this? Whatever. So I hustled to get the RFP going. Unfortunately, this is right around the time where the economy was, like, crashing, housing crisis. And so this conference was a nonprofit, and they lost a lot of their corporate funding. So they said, "Oh, we're not going to do the event this year." But it got my juices going. Like, these crazy people almost paid me $70,000 to design a curriculum based on just stuff that I knew. And so that started to seed for me. Okay, what you know is valuable. You can make money from this. And so I continued with my blogging. I got my job with the federal government, I wrote a book about my knowledge. I started to do events like this, inviting people to come. More and more people were like, oh, can you come to my city, Atlanta, Chicago, etc. because at the time I was just joining Dallas. And somebody sent me a message on social media, and she was like, well, I'm in the military and I'm in Guam, so it really doesn't matter where you go. Could you just put it online so that I could get access to it? And I was like, oh, that's such a smart idea, sure. So, duh. I mean, I was really green. So I did the whole event online, sold it for like $27, and I'll never forget, I made like over $1,000 like overnight, like in 24 hours. So, of course, I went to work the next day, like, y'all better not tell me nothing. I just made $1,000 last night. Like, I don't want to hear it. Jane, Bob, Sam. Done. But that really got me thinking, not only would people pay me for what I know, but they would pay me if I could package what I know. So, I started investing really heavily, started budgeting and saving some of that money, instead of brunch and manicures and all that, putting this into my website, putting it into logo design, building a brand, all these different things, and started to create more products. Mm-hmm. And so it really just scaled from there. One product led to another, which led to another, started getting clients, started getting more speaking engagements, and I was able to quit my job into 2016. Now, again, half of you raise your hand, you want to quit your job, half of you don't want to quit your job, which is totally fine. But while I was working my 9 to 5, I grossed $115,000 while I was working my 9 to 5 on the side, in addition to my salary. So I'll tell you, that sounds great until you get hit with taxes. So make sure you get it. I mean, it is great, but if you're gonna do this, make sure you get an accountant, because to pay 5 figures in taxes when you weren't prepared to do that is definitely kind of crazy. But I was just like, wow, why aren't more women doing this? Like, you don't have to make the leap if you don't want to. You could continue to climb your corporate ladder, continue to get that income because your skills are worth that, but continue to build your income on the side. What would that do for you? So the first step to do that is understanding that you make money through your creative imagination, right? So you earn money through your labor, but you make money through your creative imagination. This is why the person who owns the McDonald's franchise makes a lot more than the people who flip the hamburgers and fry the fries. Your labor is only worth so much. But what you think, your mind, is immeasurable because you are your greatest asset. So first thing you have to do is see your job in the right light. Once I had that experience and I made my first $1,000 immediately, when I went to work the next day, though technically I was an employee, mentally I did not see myself as an employee. I saw myself as an independent business who had one big client that was paying me, X amount of dollars per month. And so what happens when you see your job in that light, it really frees you up to be creative about your expertise, and it also causes you to see your skill set in a different light. Because a lot of us think our skill set is only worth the next pay grade that it can get us to. Mm-hmm. But when I look at my job and I'm like, wait, my job is my client, and my skill sets is something that my client is paying for, then I start to think, well, what other clients would pay for the same skill set? What are some other ways I could flip this skill set, I could package this skill set? So really it starts with your mindset, seeing your job in a different light, seeing your skill set in a different light. The next thing you want to do is start with what you know. A lot of times, we get excited about this concept of entrepreneurship on the side, and we're like, okay, great, I'm going to go start a cupcake shop or a fashion line or something, which is all great, but there are different types of investment hurdles that are needed for those kind of physical product businesses, things where you have physical inventory. I'm a big proponent of literally starting with what you know. You already know it's valuable because you're already getting paid for it, in a sense. And even if what you want to monetize in terms of what you know is not what you're getting paid for, think about what people ask you all the time. It sounds ridiculous, but you would be surprised. A story I just told the other day while I was building this business and I was thinking of ways to generate income, I realized that a lot of people, they saw that I had a website and they were like, oh, do you do websites? Can you help me do my website? And I was like, sort of, but I'm not really a web designer. But I kept seeing that people needed this, and so I was like, well, I don't know how to design websites, but what else do I know? Well, because I was working a 9 to 5 job and building this business on the side, I got really good at finding overseas contractors who could do little things for me. So, we think it's simple. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the website Fiverr.com or stuff that's like super basic for us. Like, oh, we're gonna go here and get this logo done, or have this VA do this for me, or whatever. I realized these people were asking me these questions. They had no idea that there were outsourcing websites out there, nothing like that. And so I got the bright idea. I said, well, they keep asking me about a website. Just because I can't do it doesn't mean I can't get someone to do it for me and then sell that to them. So I had a lawyer who was like, my website's terrible, I just needed something. And I told him, I said, okay, I'll create the website in advance. You take a look at it. If you like it, great, we'll talk about you paying me. If you don't like it, then don't worry about it. No one's going to say no to that offer. That was like a no-brainer offer. I went and found an overseas VA who put it together for everything all in for $65. So I found a website template online, and their time, I think $30 and $35, it was $65, presented it to the attorney. He was like, this is fantastic. I'll pay $600 for it. I was like, score. Let's do it. So this is what I'm saying in terms of thinking differently about what you know. Sometimes even we think of super high level what we know, like, oh, I know quadratic equations and economics, and I know Six Sigma, and all this stuff. I'm not saying that people won't pay you for that, but you would be surprised at things that you're overlooking that you can use and leverage to your advantage. So I always start with what you know. Additionally, when you start with what you know, there's less startup costs. So I find that women, when we go into business and we have a job on the side, or we have our main job and we're going into business on the side, we take on types of businesses that have huge startup costs associated with them, and then we wonder why we're spinning our wheels for 3 and 4 years, never getting anything off the ground. Start with what you know.
Today's episode is sponsored by my very own private membership, the More Than One Club. I believe that we're called to be successful in more than one area of life. Why can't you have a profitable business and a passionate marriage, a hefty bank account and a healthy body, crazy self-discipline and killer style? I believe that you can have it all. And so if you're listening to this and you want to be successful in more than one area, I invite you to join me inside of the More Than One Club. This is for women who are tired of being told that they can't have it all. You can have it all without it all falling apart. So if you're looking to juggle all of your roles and your goals flawlessly, please come join us. It's really fun. We do everything from book club discussions. There's various accountability groups. I provide secret podcasts only to my More Than One Club members. So if you love listening to my podcast, there's more where that came from inside of the More Than One Club only. There are events. There's opportunities for you to meet other members who are local to you. So if you struggle with finding other people who have a similar mindset to you, it's all inside of the More Than One Club. So join us for free for 2 weeks via a 14-day trial at morethanoneclub.com. That's MoreThanOneclub, morethanoneclub.com. I hope to see you inside. Now let's get into this episode.
But while you're starting with what you know, this is the next thing that I find that a lot of women miss out on, is it's important to make sure that you're meeting the right need. So there are all types of needs and services that you can provide in the marketplace, but a little hint that I learned that has been really helpful is that most people in our marketplace pay the most for things related to what marketers call the big three. So that's health, wealth, and love. Now, these are super broad. These are called mega niches. A lot of times we freak out and we're like, oh, well, what I'm doing is not necessarily related to health, wealth, and love. Well, it might be. So instead of calling it health, think of just general wellness. So it doesn't have to be like you make green juice or you're a fitness trainer or something. You could be doing wellness, stress relief, or self-care for women in corporate America. Like anything that improves somebody's overall well-being, that's something that people pay goo gobs of money for all the time. And you see it every time you watch an infomercial, you go to the mall, usually something falls into one of those three categories. So health, wealth, this is anything that is related to people and their money. So even this conference would fall under this. This was about your career, but essentially your career is about your ability to earn and make a living for yourself. And really it kind of falls into two categories because it's about your money, but in a sense it's about your health as well in terms of your well-being, you're feeling purpose-driven and that you're doing something that matters in the world. So always look at what you have to offer in those categories. In terms of love, this is better phrased as relationships. So just our ability to connect with other people, whether it be in a romantic way or not a romantic way. So it could be family relationships. It could be relationships at work. If you can take what you know and meet a pressing need in one of those three categories, your ability to earn income is going to be a lot faster. And so I find a lot of women, they get stuck and they're like, I don't understand why people aren't buying my product. It might be because they haven't articulated properly which of those categories it's falling into, because usually once you do that, then people are more than ready to sign up for whatever it is that you have. So making sure that it falls in the health, wealth, or love category. Going along with that is finding the right market. So the market consists of people who will buy whatever it is that you have to offer. I cannot tell you how many times I talk to women who want to build businesses on the side, and they want to do stuff that they think kids are going to buy, that they think teenagers are going to buy, that they think college students are going to buy, that they think, unemployed people are going to buy. And a lot of this is because we're very compassionate and we want to help people. But there's a quote, I've heard quite a few people say this, and it's like, one of the best things you can do for the poor is not be one of them. And so it's really important that you find a market that has both the financial capability and the financial willingness to pay you for what you know. So you can still serve this market. So in a sense, let's say you want to do something for teenagers. Well, teenagers, they don't have a ton of money. They have maybe like money that they make after school, and the stuff that they're buying is like gym shoes and makeup. They're not going to buy, something for college preparation or whatever. But maybe their parents will, right? So find the market that has a pressing need, so an urgency or a willingness to buy what you have to offer, and also has the capability. Are the parents gainfully employed? Are these people that want to send their kids to a good school, and maybe you do some sort of resume writing for, high school students or teenagers or something like that. So I always think differently about your market. If you're working with people who don't have the financial capacity and ability to pay you, find someone who wants to tap that market and then be able to serve them. And the last thing is build your brand. If you're not building a brand, you're building a commodity. And you never want to build a commodity, because commodities get sold and traded on price. And so this is how women get into this situation where they're constantly lowering their prices, desperate to get somebody to buy whatever they have. So, $100 doesn't work for you? Okay, what about 50? 25? 10? No? Oh, okay, I'll do it for free. And that breaks my heart, because I'm like, your skills are worth so much more than that. Part of the biggest issue is just simply you don't have a brand that does a lot of the selling for you. Part of the reason why we drink Coca-Cola, Pepsi, etc. is because we know them by brand name. We know what they stand for. We know what the taste is like. So you can build a brand in that way on your own level. The biggest thing that I did on accident was build a brand all those years, packaging my knowledge, talking about personal development, talking about finance, talking about business, so that when I was ready to sell something, people knew who I was, they knew what I stood for, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember her, I've been following her blog since like 2009, this looks really interesting, I want to come to her event, or I want to buy her book, or I want to buy her course. So think about, what is it that you stand for, not just what you sell, who is it that you serve, and how can you package all of that up to separate yourself from those who are already in the marketplace doing something similar to what you do, because your brand is essentially what's going to stand out for you. Brands are what brought you here. You know the Dress for Success brand, even though I can tell you for a fact they're not the only nonprofit that does something similar to this. You know Tony in the corporate tee, you follow her brand. And so if you want to be serious about building a business outside of your 9-to-5, you're definitely going to need to build your own brand. So Tony told me to keep it at 30, and I'm right at 32. So I want to open it up for questions. But before we go, if you're not sure how you can monetize your skill set, feel free to ask more questions about building a hustle while at your main hustle.
I've been an entrepreneur now for 12 years. And I totally felt you when we were talking about the federal job.
Yeah.
Because I work for the only electric company in Tampa, Florida.
Oh,
which is
wow.
Tico. And I had a unionized job. I could burn down the building and they still had to get a committee to hire me.
Wow.
And I quit my job to do hair.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of, well, you weren't in here previously, but it was a lady talking about her family and her husband not doing change. Well, my husband didn't do change. Well, he did not feel like that was a real job. And we ended up separated and divorced.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the catalysts.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started doing hair, I realized this doesn't come with PTO time. This doesn't come with benefits. This doesn't come with, and people tend to, their service providers, they tend not to think about how they think about their jobs. So it's like, okay, they'll call you and they'll say, girl, I'm tired, I'm not coming, or, you know, whatever, or I got something else, but they don't realize, what if you walk in your 40-hour work, your job, and they say, you know what? Do 4 hours and we're not going to pay you for the other 4 and just go home and don't worry about it.
Wow. Yeah.
And your 40 hours turned into 36 hours. And then you walked in the next day and they said, you know, take 2 hours off of that. And they don't realize that your service provider works like that. Like when we see our books and we think this is the money we're going to make, these are the services we're going to provide or whatnot. And so then I started to do like destination weddings and stuff like that, where I did hair and I went different places and stuff like that, but everything was still built off of the earn.
Yeah.
Not the make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even now, I do microblading and I do hair. And so it's still trying to figure out, how do I make the money? Because everything else that I tend to think of are investments that are a little bit top heavy. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not necessarily build into yourself type things. And so just kind of give me a little something for the person who's not already earning aside. This is what they do.
Yeah.
They are the entrepreneur.
Right. So even if this is like, would be good as an affirmation, you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and you tell yourself, what I know is always worth more than what I can do. Seriously. And so from your business standpoint, what you know not only how to do hair, you know how to do a hair business, you know how to microblade, you know how to get destination wedding clients. There's a lot that you know how to do. You know how to navigate, you know, an unsupportive spouse in this industry. You know a lot. And I find that we'd like totally overlook that. We think the knowledge is only useful for the labor. Like, what I know is only worth so that I can do it. And it's like, no, what you know is valuable because other people want to know the same thing. And you can package that and you can make a lot more money without you physically needing to be present if you just teach people what you know. I have a client who's a makeup artist in Washington, D.C. She's like been named like DC's best makeup artist, whatever. She made $250,000 last year teaching other makeup artists her technique, you know, because they're like, oh, you do such like pretty looks. You don't make people look like drag queens. Like, I don't, you know, how can I do that? Well, and she found that higher end clients liked, you know, the kind of glowy, natural, prettier look or whatever. And so she took that for herself. And other people were like, how do I make my clients look like this as well? So she started teaching. And she gets paid big bucks for that, and she flips that in a myriad of ways. It could be a course, it could be an in-person event. She'll have a room just like this, and we'll charge $300 per head for people to come in and just watch and listen for a few hours. People ask her, how do you take pretty pictures and post it on Instagram and get clients this way? She's like, I take all my pictures on my iPhone. People are paying her right now to learn, how do you use your iPhone to take makeup pictures in a certain way? So for you, I would say start backing away from, and not necessarily like stop the earn, because you need the earn to fund the make. So keep earning, but while you're earning, start switching your mindset and thinking, first of all, assume, so this is for everybody, this year, assume everything you know is valuable. Literally. I just posted something like this on Instagram. Your mind is a gold mine. Literally. Assume everything you know has more value than what you're giving it credit for. And that's definitely true for you. And so just start going through what you know and start looking for communities that are desiring to know what you know, and start just figuring out ways that you can meet that need. And so you could be sitting at home, maybe you only take the hair clients that you want to take because it's fun for you, but all of your other information products, maybe you have video courses, everything that you do is generating income for you, and that's making your money. Your mind makes your money.
Yeah.
So what do you do when it's a conflict of interest for your current employer to do what you do well inside?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Mine was like gray area because I talked about money a little bit. Do you guys have like an ethics officer or somebody at your work?
I'm a financial advisor.
Okay, and they're not supposed to like, you know, tell you about, so you could do the whole, I have a friend who is interested in this, but I would figure out what the strict boundaries are, because it might be something as simple as you can't earn income, you know, from this. So yeah, I would get clear on what the guidelines are. And for most companies, it's around selling, like you can't generate an income off this type of information, but no one said you can't build a brand off this type of information. And what was helpful for me, even though I did it by accident, I had built a brand for years before I had anything to sell because I didn't know any better. And so just the fact that people are following me looking for this type of information when I was ready to sell something, that's when it, when it really took off. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on, so like I know my entrepreneurial endeavor is pretty close aligned to kind of what you're doing currently, so I'm excited to hear you talk.
Yay.
But what about when your demands of your current job are, they exceed the time you need to be able to put into your entrepreneurial endeavor? So like if I'm a leader at work, and right now I have to do performance evaluations and a plethora of things, and that responsibility has me working 12-hour days, and it kind of takes away from that time. Would you recommend like stepping down into a lower position, or what are your thoughts on that?
For that, I think it depends on what your end goal is. For me, right before I quit my job, I had gone through a training program for like 4 years, and then I knew I was up for a promotion. I knew that this is what I wanted to do full time, and so I deliberately, while it was a promotion, it was kind of a downgrade in terms of the type of work that I'd be doing, but I knew that it would keep me in the city. I wouldn't have to travel all the time. I knew for the most part it wouldn't have me working crazy hours. I did that almost as an investment in my business because I knew I wanted my business to be my full-time business. Yeah. So it depends on what your goals are. If you're one of those people that's like, no, I want to climb the corporate ladder and I want to have this on the side, then you're going to have to think of going back to what you know and finding markets and all that, finding business types and ways you can monetize your knowledge that don't require a lot of energy and like upfront investment from you. And also really engineering your life too. So I told my husband, I was like, look, we're getting a house cleaner. Like, we just have to do this, because I don't have time to, spend hours every week cleaning up. And then that turned into, okay, I'm not taking the clothes to the dry cleaner anymore. They're going to have to come to the house and pick it up. I'm dropping the bag out the front door. Yes, I know it costs more, but I don't care because this is an investment in my business. Then that turned to, okay, I'm ordering groceries on Instacart. Yes, I know there's delivery. So I know he's probably like done with me. Like, dude, you quit your job. You have more time now. Like, why are we still outsourcing anything? Because I like it. So just being honest, about that. But at the same time, we don't have cable. Like, we have internet, and then we have like he's playing with like YouTube Red and like all these like weird like $30 a month like streaming. Yeah. But all we watch is Netflix anyway, and all he wants to watch is his sports. And so he found a package that'll let him watch sports for like $20 a month. That's all we need. So that's a trade-off, that you have to be willing to make in your lifestyle, is looking at what's not really necessary. How can you put more of that towards things that free up your time, so that you have time to do both. But yeah, if you're like, I'm not trying to climb the corporate ladder, yeah, then,
I want to do this.
Yeah, that's the leap. A lot of people are afraid to do that. Like, they say, like, oh, I don't want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to do this full time, but they're not willing to make decisions at work. Like, if you know you want to do this full time, and the next step in your job is going to require you to travel 80%, move to a different city, work 12, 15-hour days, they're telling you this is not compatible with what you're trying to do on the side. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You have to, like, to decide literally means to cut off. And so for me, I cut off anything that was going to keep me from doing this, and it accelerated my growth, and I was able to leave. So, yeah. Anybody else? No? Okay. Oh, yeah.
What about like long-term investments and 401ks and all that stuff? Like, what are you doing, but like, what do people do who are entrepreneurs who, because like I stay at my job because I like the security of 401k insurance and all that stuff too. Yeah. That's what gives me like anxiety about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways. I think, again, we don't give ourselves credit of how knowledgeable our mindset is. And I'll just let you guys know, last year I did over $300,000 just from like selling digital products and stuff. I have 5 employees. I invest in a SEP 401k that I fund. So again, the people at my job, they thought I was crazy. They're like, we get a 10% match. I'm like, I'm getting a 100% match. Like, I fund my own 401k, and then there are advantages as a business owner. It's like I can double dip because I'm the employee of my business and I'm the funder of the business, and so I can move money in ways where I'm not getting taxed as heavily. So there's a lot of benefits to that. there's all kind of health insurance exchanges. I'm a member of WeWork, and they were always like selling different companies that you can go to and you get a discount just for being an entrepreneur. So really for what you're paying anyway, because that stuff is not free. Like, yeah, your job is sponsoring it, but it's still coming out of your paycheck, you know, $400, $500, $600 a month. If it comes out of your pre-tax business revenue, like you won't even feel the difference, you know? So I think you'd be surprised how much your business could fund if you allowed it to get there. But a thing for me is I didn't quit my job cold turkey before any of this. You know, I needed it to show me that this is something that it could do. And once it did, my life doesn't look different. Like everything is covered. It's just covered by my business instead of, you know, I mean, your job is a business, right? Right. So they cover you and, you know, 1,000 other employees. Surely your business can cover just one. Right? Yeah. So.
When I started doing hair and whatnot, I had to get my own insurances and stuff like that. So, you know, the Dutch Aflac and everything.
Yeah.
So, you know, if something happened to me, you know, because my business is one of those businesses that takes me.
Yep.
You know, I can't outsource it. I can't, when you come to the shop, I can't say, oh, Kelsey's going to do your hair today. You like, nah. So I had to get a lot of things. I belong to USAA. So, you know, 401k, money market accounts and stuff just in case I need to reach some funds really quickly and not have a penalty paid or whatnot. So you start to learn things, but I think the biggest butt kicker is health insurance. That has been, and that's why I begged to ask you about that. I'm a DBA, you know, I don't have employees and stuff and things of that nature. I'm by myself. So I have to go through the through the marketplace and things of that nature, and I end up either qualifying before taxes because, you know, as an entrepreneur, you got a lot of loopholes and they'll tax you after certain, you know, things. And I end up paying more or less all of it back from, you know, the entire year, or I can't get it and I'm paying $1,000 a month, you know, in health insurance. Yeah. And I'm just kind of trying to figure that out, you know.
I would say, I mean, definitely for you, I think it's a business structure problem because anything that requires your labor, whether it's a job or entrepreneurship, is only going to be so much. And so part of why the reason I recommended earlier one of the books is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Another one that's really good by him is Cash Flow Quadrant. And he talks about like these 4 categories where the category up here is employed and the category down here is self-employed. And he's like, most people move from employed to self-employed and they think like, oh, I'm done. But he's like, really the goal is to move to the second side of the quadrant, which is business owner and then investor. And so it's fine to move from here to here, self-employed, but very quickly you got to gear up and get to that business owner, because if you don't get to that business owner, really it's kind of like a worse deal from a tax standpoint and from what you're talking about down here, because the government still sees you as an employee. It's just like you're the person covering it. Where the government sees you as a business owner, it's totally different. And just side note, I'm really passionate about talking about this side of the quadrant, business and investment, and I think more of us as African Americans have to really take that seriously in terms of building that, because this is literally what this country was built on, literally. Like my accountant, he told me this and I was like, is this true? But then I started researching and I was like, oh my goodness, this is true. He was like, because I was dealing with the same thing the first time I made 115, I was working my job and I got slammed with all these taxes and I was like, what the heck? Like I thought this wasn't gonna work out like this. And he's like, you have to realize that this country was built for business owners and landowners. And so regardless of what you do over here, if you like your job, if you like yourself, you know, you like doing hair because it's fun, that's fine. You don't have to quit this. But all of us need to be hustling as quickly as possible to the business and investor side if we really want to get ahead in this country, because from the beginning, before we were a country, and there are really excellent books on this that talk about this, they, like, again, for voting or whatever, we talk, Black History Month is coming up, and we're like, oh, you know, Black people didn't have the right to vote, and all this. People forget, not all white people in this country had the right to vote. From the very beginning, the only people that could vote were landowners and business owners. And so it was a long time. And then they said, okay, well, all white males could vote. And then it was like, okay, well, you know, we'll work with the rest of you guys. But, you know, we think we have a race problem, and we do. But a lot of the bigger problems that we have is an economic problem. And the biggest thing that's been kept from us is we don't understand economic systems in this country, and we're not taking it to our advantage.
Not only economic systems, but the idea of government also, because what you're explaining is the Jackson-Hamilton effect.
Yeah.
That is exactly what you're explaining, and I get it.
Yeah.
I guess everybody has an aha moment. But I know damn sure had mine.
but you can do it. Like, start monetizing what you know, building a business off what you know. I mean, the returns are amazing. Go ahead.
What advice do you give entrepreneurs in terms of when they're thinking about the tax implications of like being an S corp or LLC when they're just starting out?
My advice is go talk to an attorney. No, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. But the three biggest investments that you can make in your business, in addition to like website and all that stuff, get you a good CPA, get you a good attorney, and get you a good financial advisor. And your financial advisor should be different from your CPA, and they'll let you know. The biggest difference I find with S corp has to deal with like, if you do have employees versus contractors, whether you're required to, like after a certain level, you have to start providing health insurance or whatever. If you provide a 401k for yourself and you're an S corp and you have employees, then by definition, you're supposed to be providing contributions to them, different things like that. But S corps can be really helpful from the taxation standpoint, because if I remember correctly, when you stay in that self-employed category, it's kind of a double doozy, and I experienced this because you get taxed as an employee, but then you get hit with self-employment tax too, and it's like, who knew that there was such a thing as self-employment tax? Like, oh my goodness. So moving to an S corp, and you don't have to have employees to do that. Like a lot of CPAs will be like, oh, it's not necessary, but you tell them, no, it is. From a tax standpoint, you could be a solo LLC, still file as an S corp, and avoid that self-employment tax and get greater benefits. So definitely talk to somebody to see how all that structures out. But I found that like moving to S corp was really beneficial.
Is there a happy medium between keeping your job and having your own business? Like, or does the scale tip at some point where you have to kind of go hard for your side hustle, or can you keep your job and?
It's all about business models. So again, that's why I'm like recommending the quiz. Not all business models are labor intensive. I do this because I love it. Like I would speak for free. So yeah, but I create things that don't necessarily require me to be there, and I've really ramped that up since I am pregnant and having a kid. People are like, "Oh, you're gonna take off work?" And I'm like, "Yes, but I have stuff going for me where if I leave, it's not just all gonna fall down." But I have a friend right now who I had lunch with the other day. She works a full-time job, and her business is real estate investing. And so she's like, I work here because my husband said I can't quit. But she's like, the rental income we get from our houses would more than cover, what I want to make. There's people that do drop shipping on Amazon, So if you know something and you know a lot about, say, the hair market, right? And you're like, well, I'm going to start drop shipping hair bundles. I have a friend who had a hookup like in India or something like that, was an engineer making 6 figures, and she just had this whole operation on the side where she wasn't even involved with it, and was selling all this hair. And I was like, this is crazy. So it's really just about the research, understanding the business model is going to allow you to do both, and it's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. But there's plenty of people who are like, oh, this job is so easy. Like, I'm going to get my paycheck and still run this thing. And it just benefits them. So. Well, yes, I hope you guys start your side hustle. So ping me on Instagram,